Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just pushed the record button.
All right, here we go. So my name's Pat Green. I'm a partner here at SCM Connections. I've been in the supply chain, SAP supply chain world for about over 20 years now, 22, something along those lines, all in the supply chain space in various areas, demand, supply network planning, PPDS, detailed scheduling, as well as network optimization, et cetera. So I've been a long time supply planning practitioner. Mostly in the SAP space, and have been doing IBP for the past about 6 or 7 years now, since about 2014, 15, right around there when it first started getting its legs. Today, we're going to kind of talk through what some of the things that we've developed internally, and we want to share with you today is basically a platform that we're putting together. We're calling it Spotlight. It's essentially taking information from your systems, your external systems, your planning systems, et cetera, consolidating onto a single platform, a Power BI platform, and then giving you the ability to kind of see real-time dashboards as you're pulling various information from your systems, whether it be IBP, SAP, Salesforce, et cetera. So we'll kind of talk through that today. And I'll kind of show you what we've built and kind of how you would use this in your, in your business to kind of drive efficiencies and really get a better picture from a managerial perspective and executive perspective of how your business is performing overall. So with that, we'll get started. Mike, anything on your end you'd like to add?
Yeah, just some quick housekeeping notes for everybody. Again, there's going to be quite a few people on here. So we're asking you to keep your mic muted. We'll open it up at the end, but if you have questions along the way, use the questions feature or raise your hand in the GoToWebinar platform. That should, and I'll go ahead and Pat, I'll interrupt when we get questions along the way, but that seems to be the best way to do it in managing a large group like this. So go ahead with that, and we're going to record it, like I said, to share it out. So I think that's the only housekeeping notes we have. Pat, take it away.
Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, any questions are great. I know there'll be a lot of things that we'll go through today, and we'll probably go through a lot of things quickly. But any questions you might have, just put them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them. Try and keep it as interactive as possible. We have a little bit larger group, but always willing to take questions and kind of answer them as we go along. So appreciate your time today. So first, we're going to kind of talk about why this is important, and kind of what we're let's see. Oh my, let's see. I've got this. Well, that worked. There we go. So, one of the things that I've seen consistently in my career is, really getting visibility throughout your supply chain, right? So, understanding and getting the visibility out of SAP and different, the various systems that your supply chain uses, as well as the offline spreadsheets that you may be using to fill gaps in different areas that your business process, maybe the software isn't quite getting to. And really, you've seen this consistently, and as we've kind of worked with our clients, we've seen consistency from our clients. Like, we need some help doing the specific, production attainment, specific reporting requirements, and we've kind of built them year after year, client after client. And so we've taken that expertise and kind of that experience and then leveraged some of the questions that are being asked from our clients around, well, now that we have IBP and we've got more advanced planning tools, can we pull some information and answer different questions that we would have answered before? So, things along profitability, revenue generation, looking at costs, et cetera, looking at the operational plan versus your annual operating plan. So all of those things are kind of coming to a head within the supply chain. And fortunately, systems and IBP specifically is matured enough that we can get all of this information out of the system and then look at it in a very concise and kind of consolidated way. So a lot of our planning systems are more advanced, so we can kind of see this. But really, when you think about it, some of the problems with the visibility of your supply chain is really the data is not easily consumed by the users, right? So if you're looking at Excel, it's great to look at 1 or 2 products or 10 products, et cetera. But it doesn't really give you that kind of visual impact, and that you're looking at a sea of numbers a lot of times, right? You can graph and whatnot, but it just doesn't have that impact of a visual tool. And as such, then key issues are difficult to identify and address. So if you've got are you missing on revenue? How much are you missing? What are the specific, is it, the tolerances? When do you actually care about a revenue miss or a cost miss, et cetera? And to be quite honest, systems are complex and data heavy, right? So really getting the data out of the system in a way that's consolidated, aggregated, so you can see the information, make a decision, as well as not be in the weeds all the time that you're getting snowblind with all the data, is really kind of a key. And if you think about how you view things, from Tableau or business intelligence or visibility, all of those systems are moving in a more visual type basis, right? Think about your cell phone; it's just far more visual than it would have been when they first evolved. Okay, and really, the big thing about kind of all of that from a data perspective, but the other issue we see consistently is that the enterprise planning is fragmented and lacks cohesion with your kind of as a global organization. And the financial groups and the supply chain groups work in two different worlds. Finance is really focused on revenue, cost, profitability. They're looking at numbers and values and financial analysis, where supply chain is focused really on hitting your customer service numbers, your inventory, production capacity, et cetera. Far more focused on quantities rather than currency and values, right? Finance works in the world of currency. Supply chain views the world in terms of quantities. Though tightly integrated, they don't often align on a common objective, right? So as the plan comes along, the supply planning team is working and the forecasting team is working on quantities, and the financial organization is looking at things like revenues, and those don't always come together in a strategic way. And what happens is both groups are making decisions without all the relevant information. You're planning something on the operational side without actually getting the information back to the financial side to know if you can support it, as well as really understanding proactively knocking those issues out before they actually kind of happen. So if you're planning for something, you can notice that 3 months ahead of time, you've got more time to react, whether that's a revenue miss or potentially additional cost or a product miss that kind of throws you sideways. Okay. So what Spotlight's doing, and what we've built is a platform that allows linking your financial and operational plans into a single platform, gaining visibility of the financial implications of changes to the operational plan, right? So as you're making those changes with an IBP and all the information that's coming out of IBP, you can bring that into Spotlight and actually view it and then analyze it and drill down in a really kind of cohesive way. You can track operational results against the business plan to make sure that your course correction, so if we're missing a revenue number, what do I need to do to get ahead of that? If my costs are exceeding what my business plan was, what are the decisions I need to make now as a supply chain so that doesn't come to bite me in the year end in my profitability numbers? As well as, seeing that and capitalizing on opportunities in the market, right? The past year has seen a lot of kind of churn in the supply chain, right? Some companies have been nimble and have taken advantage of that, and other companies have kind of fallen behind. The nimble organizations really kind of look at this and say, hey, here's a financial opportunity. Do I have what it takes? And do I have the capital? Do I have the machinery? Do I have capacity, et cetera, to capitalize on that? Or is it going to blow up my supply chain and really put my business at risk? And then finally, really the ability to drill down and easily identify areas of opportunity and concern within your organization is really what this is all about. Kind of seeing things in a visual manner that you can actually view it and make a decision more easily and more cohesively. Okay. So, if you kind of think about the system architecture, what we've built out is really based on kind of a consolidated hub in real time. And the primary focus with us is really because we're an SAP shop and we're an IBP implementer. We're really focused on the integrated business planning part of it, and really the integration with IBP with Spotlight. And that's done through a no data open API. It's cloud to cloud. And so you're using that data in real time, and then you're able to press the button, refresh in real time as a user, rather than having to wait for your BI team to refresh and do extracts and have it go, 1 or 2 days before the information is available for you. As well, from a system architecture perspective, because it's flexible, we can bring in information and data from Salesforce, from IRI, from external data sources, SAP BW, et cetera, and then sit on top. Spotlight can sit on top of that, or bring it into Spotlight, the database or data lake, and then actually report on those pieces of information as need be, right? So all of this is in the cloud, so we can pull that information in real time as long as there's an API available that supports an extract. Okay. All right. So really, kind of the key here is, we're trying to answer the question: are we on track to meet our financial plan, right? So that's really what it's all about when you're doing the planning. And that's kind of the next piece of when you get to that Gartner level 3 or level 4 maturity level for SNOP. You're really starting to integrate not only your quantities and your operational plan, but your financial plan is coming along for the ride, and that's being integrated on both sides. And really what Spotlight will help you do is then say, answer the questions, make better decisions. Are we on track to meet our financial plan? If we're not, what are we going to do to mitigate our risk? What are we going to do to capitalize on other opportunities, right? So we can track financial performance of the AOP, the annual operating plan. We can quickly identify and monitor positive and negative variance from the operational plan to the business plan. And then again, take course corrections in our planning system as need be, to make those business decisions at a higher level, at that executive SNOP level. So if you think about that, means things like revenue attainment. Are you actually hitting your actual versus and projected versus your annual operating plan? What's the variance, right? What's the percentage of the annual operating plan that you're missing? Profitability is the same thing, and cost would be the same thing. So really, it's taking that information. What was the plan, and then how far am I varying from that specific plan? Okay. All right. So, we kind of break it down to three or four different areas, but really the first thing is demand. So that's really financial analysis, and I won't go into the specific KPIs and metrics. We'll get directly into the tool set. But really, a financial analysis on the demand side is all about revenue, right? It's actual sales and revenue versus your AOP and your planned revenue based by market, based on product families, et cetera. And we're looking at forecasted sales revenue versus AOP, looking at your actual and your forecast going forward. And that's kind of the key thing, getting IBP integrated with Spotlight, is that you can now take your operational plan, which is driving your supply plan, and then build that and merge that with your financial plan. And that's really kind of a big unlock. So now I can not only say, did I hit my number in the past 6 months, but will I hit my number in the next 6 months based on my supply plan and my production plan? Okay. And you can also look at your attainment, right? Am I hitting my numbers? What's the variance? You can look at the revenue breakdown based on promotions, baseline events, what's your total lift, et cetera. Anything on the demand side you can bring into to Spotlight and view it and report on it, et cetera. And obviously you've got all the KPIs and metrics for demand, forecast accuracy, forecast bias, forecast value add. All these metrics are available within the Spotlight platform. Okay. Talk about inventory. Really, on the financial side, it's all about your inventory capital costs. Looking at your historic inventory balances and costs and saying, where have I been in the past? Did that hit my objective? You can look at your inventory capital versus your annual operating plan. Did I, what was my average inventory in the past, and what was my plan in versus my annual operating plan in the past? And obviously you can do, on the flip side, is to take the look forward and say, what are my projected inventory costs going forward? And then how does that compare to my annual operating plan? Am I carrying more inventory than I expected? Am I carrying less inventory than I expected? And then what is the capital implications of doing that, right? If my inventory goes from 10 to 20 million for this product family, is that still a profitable product family for me? Okay. And obviously KPIs and metrics, ending inventory versus the annual plan, projected inventory to targets, your excess and shortages, and obviously your customer service metrics are hitting your on time and full. Is your projected inventory supporting your ability to hit your customer service targets? Okay. And then finally, we're going to talk about production, which is really kind of the production analysis is absorption versus the annual budget, right? So on the financial side is what's the cost of production for this year, and what was my budget for production this year, and how close am I as I march through time in my production plan? Are we executing against it? If am I hitting my budgeted production? Am I ahead of my budget? Am I behind my budget? And then what does that look like? Do I have a positive or a negative variance? You can look at production, historical production costs versus your AOP, right? Again, and that kind of helps in that analysis also. And then going forward, you can say, you know, maybe I have a negative variance today, but will I have a negative variance towards the end of the year? And what will I be doing? You know, is that because of a product mix change or something that didn't quite align to my annual operating plan? And then go back to the IBP system, right? In integrated business planning, and then kind of make those adjustments as need be. Okay. Again, KPIs and metrics, we deliver, you know, operational plan versus AOP variance, right? So that's going to be looking at your plan versus your annual operating plan on a quantity basis. Production adherence that I make within a weekly bucket or a daily bucket, that I make my production, that I hit the dates that I said I would. Your plan attainment are the quantities that what I said I would. You do that same with revenue on the absorption side, as well as plan attainment on the quantity side. Capacity utilization is obviously something that we would bring in and kind of show that in a dashboard manner. Okay. So, you know, if you look at all of these things, really Spotlight, because we're pulling all the data into Spotlight, the platform, now we have a lot of capabilities around that. And then the key piece of it is you make changes to your IBP system and your operational plan in real time, we can refresh that data in real time. So as you're making changes, that things are happening, you don't have to wait overnight. You press the button, the refresh button, and then based on your selections at your desktop, you can bring all of that information again and review it real time. As well, you can bring in different versions, you can bring in different simulations, etc. And then kind of one last thing from SAP's perspective is we look here, going back to the system architecture, the OData Open API will also allow for analysis to happen in external systems and read that back and publish that back to IBP via the Open API, the OData API. That'll be available soon. It's not available yet, but that will allow additional capabilities within Spotlight in terms of analysis, et cetera. Maybe it allows you to go into Python and R and do more in-depth statistical analysis.
So Pat, I think that's one thing to highlight when it comes to just sort of your standard reporting solution is, you know, we hear a lot from clients that, you know, it's one thing to review the solution, but then how do you actually, you know, get some of those analysis back into it? And it's kind of blurring the line a little bit, isn't it? Between the traditional, you know, what you would have done with like BW back in the day compared to what we can do now with these OData connectors. You want to just kind of highlight what that enables based on the new technology?
Yeah. So what that enables is, you know, the ability to do analysis within outside of the IBP data system, right? Whether that's doing things along the lines of additional algorithms around, say, machine learning algorithms around forecasting, and bringing IRI data or Salesforce data or any external data source, and then using that to create a different machine learning algorithm, as well as you can do different data analysis within Spotlight, within using the connectors within Python and R, which is a statistical programming language, and then do analysis within Spotlight or Power BI, and then actually publish that. Once you get the information in, and then you've analyzed it, you can push that back to IBP, and that gives you kind of that two-way street. So it's not just analyzing; it's actually making some decisions within Power BI, confirming and publishing it back. Again, those would be gaps within the SAP architecture and solution, that you'd be able to kind of fill those gaps within something like Spotlight. Okay. Anything else on that, Mike?
No, I'm just gonna, you know, make sure we highlight that these lines are getting blurred between, you know, what you would understand as traditional reporting and execution tools, which then leads you to say, well, then, you know, what do I do in each one? And how does that feed into my overall IT strategy? So I think that's important to keep in mind as you're going through some of these examples, is not just, okay, here's data that's static, but like, how do I open it up so that you're doing the task where it makes the most sense?
Exactly.
Requirements.
Yeah, exactly. And I think integrated business planning did kind of took the first step in blurring that line between reporting and the planning system by enabling Excel and kind of really building the infrastructure around kind of reporting and the capabilities to kind of slice and dice, which was, if you look at the APO coming from an APO world, that was a big jump. And you'll only see that going forward. And these connectors, the API connectors between all of these systems, cloud to cloud, will again become only more blurred going forward, which presents its own challenges, obviously. Okay, data integrity, making sure you've got continuity in your data, making sure that you've got some consistency. A material in Salesforce has the same characteristics and data characteristics that it would in SAP, and that's not always the case, right? So normalize and harmonizing your data is kind of a big piece of this, and something like a Spotlight would help kind of drive that. Okay. All right, so with that being said, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. So I think hopefully most of the people on the phone are kind of familiar with IBP, and that's where we're bringing all of our data in for this particular session today. Well, what I'm going to work is kind of a standard. I'm going to kind of work through today, and we'll go through each one of these as kind of a walking through it one at a time. We're going to talk through quantities first. We'll talk about what's considered a demand review and a supply review. And then we'll talk about the high-level financial plan, which is really kind of looking at your profitability cost versus your plan and kind of where you stand today in meeting your financial objectives, and then kind of drilling down. And then finally, we'll go into the specifics around what's the revenue, are you hitting your revenue targets and your revenue attainment, and then looking at your inventory values, what do those look like going forward, what are your average inventory, your projections, et cetera, and then finally your production costs and looking at the absorption numbers. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to focus on today is the demand review, and this is kind of fairly simple, fairly straightforward, right? This is, and I think the one thing about this, most people on this, supply chain folks would kind of get what this looks like, right? So in terms of demand, your various inputs, what we can do is review the various inputs for your organization, and then kind of present those in a way that's kind of consolidated. And looking at the different demand numbers, and then look at things like what's your consensus revenue associated with it, what's your AOP revenue, your AOP revenue variance, right? So now you're taking these numbers, right, which are your operational plan going forward, and then comparing them to what your AOP numbers would be, and then look at the variance for each one of those. So this is a big deal, right? Now we've got all the information in one place to do this quickly and do it effectively, okay? And so a couple things I'll show you. To the left, I have, various slicers, right? So we're looking at customer name, product group, product family, product location, right? So we have all of this information that we're able to slice and dice. Any attribute that's associated with your specific master data object, product location, customers is, up for grabs to be pulled into Spotlight, right? So if you look at things by size or by frequency, et cetera, we can bring that in. It's very simple to do, and it's kind of all part of the mapping. Okay. We also have multiple key figures. So we're bringing in all of the one-stop shop and kind of showing you different pieces of information. We'll show you demand consolidated with supply, consolidated with inventory, consolidated with production. You're kind of going to look at that all in one place. So if you look at your financial review, you can look at your consensus revenue and then compare that against what your production numbers might be, right? So when you look at this, think about, the capabilities, how you can extend that and answer questions in your supply chain that you wouldn't have been able to answer before, all right? So kind of quickly, what I'm going to show you here. So if we kind of walk through this, the first thing from a demand review, I would take a look at my statistical forecast, right? Here's my, this is what the planners are giving me, right? So here's my statistical forecast. This is what the system generated. I have a demand planning forecast in this case, which, we're looking at 4.6 million. These almost match, certainly within this period. And then we can kind of slice and dice pretty easily to say, I don't want to look at everything. I only want to look at the next 12 months. So I have a slider on the bottom. It's going to update quickly. And I'm going to see, here are my numbers. So again, I'm pretty close, okay? So my statistical forecast is 3.5 million. I'm looking at my demand planning forecast here. You can see in this case, you know, Americas are sitting at 2.24 for May of 2022, and Europe sitting at 68, okay? And then down here, you can look at your consensus demand plan. And this is what will actually drive your supply plan within IBP. So your consensus demand plan, you've got your statistical forecast, you can bring in your sales forecast, you can bring in promotions, et cetera. But eventually you get to the consensus demand plan number, okay? And I want to compare that to say, okay, well, now as I kind of slice and dice by my regions, by my customers, et cetera, then I can kind of drill in pretty quickly and say, what's my variability to my AOP plan on my consensus side, okay? I can see the inputs for my demand planning forecast and my statistical forecast, and then I can see my consensus and how that compares. So I can do this, I can just go down and say, okay, I want to look at everything in Americas for that time horizon. It's going to tell me that I'm sitting at 2.62 million, and this is my consensus demand plan. So my revenue for the year, right, for this period, or for the next 12 months, is going to be sitting at 74.6 million on the consensus side. My cost, right, so the landed cost of the DC is going to be 44.98 million, and then my consensus profit at that point, based on this current plan for the Americas, is going to be 29.878 million for that period for the next 12 months, okay? I'll compare that to my AOP plan, right? And my AOP plan I was sitting at 68 million. My costs were 44 million, and my profitability was sitting at 24. So I'm missing, if you kind of, you know, the key thing to see here is I'm missing on my variability, my variance on cost, or sorry, on revenue. So I'm higher on revenue, and oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong example. I'm higher on revenue. I'm also higher on profitability. Okay. So if you kind of look at this, and then, but my cost is not that much higher relative to my profitability. So what that tells me is I probably have a more profitable product mix that's coming through than I'm planning for going forward. Okay. I can do the same thing and move on to Europe. Okay, and you kind of see the same things. Okay, so now I'm sitting at 8.361 or 831, and then 834, and then 774. And then you can kind of look at the same profitability numbers. You can see here for that period, you know, my revenue is down and my costs are obviously down, but also my profitability for Europe over that period of the next 12 months. And you can kind of see that in my consensus plan. All right. Now, one of the things I like to do is, and you'll see this in all of my dashboards as we kind of pull through this. I'm not a huge fan of using the slicers, although this is a very nice way, an easy way to kind of go from, you know, your product families, your product segmentation, et cetera. But I'm a much bigger fan, personally, of using, taking a piece of information and then using that and then highlighting those that are most important. Sorry, some of my blanks, some faulty data in there. Okay, so in this particular, this is like a heat map, if you will. But what this has done is said my consensus value by product family. In this case, it's you know, these are my product families or my products. And what I can do here, and what I really like, and it keeps it easy, I can then say, okay, I want to look at the products in the product families that kind of matter most to me, and those are the ones with the highest quantities. Okay, so it's kind of taking your A's, B's, C's, right? And I can start ticking through these quickly and say, okay, you know, my highest volume, right? Office Bromance, and in this case, we're looking at a soap company, so these are all soaps, right? So it's Office Romance. And I can go here and I can say, well, I'm really missing on my top runners in this case, right? I can kind of work through these one at a time and see if I'm looking here, my two highest volume items are probably really missing on my, not only my revenue targets, but also on my quantity targets, right? And then as I work through these, I can see, and it's getting updated immediately, I can see where my revenue numbers are for each one of these products, right? So if I look here for Irish Winter, I can see that my consensus revenue for the next year is going to be, this is my planned revenue, is going to be 21.25. My AOP revenue is sitting at 14.6, and now I can see that I've got a positive variance for, I'm exceeding my revenue targets for the year, okay, or for the next 12 months. All right, I can also say what's my consolidated actual and consensus quantity here as I move back into the past, and then look at my AOP quantity. So if I go through this, this will allow me to compare the two and then see this in a way to say, here's my actuals, what were my actuals in the past, and consolidate those in a way to say, how am I tracking against my overall plan, okay? So I can kind of see this in the past. Now, what you'll notice in the demand, I don't have all of these, I will have consensus, but if I only want to look for the year, you can quickly see my sales, what I'm going to do for this financial year, right? So if I look overall for my financial year, not going forward, I can take a look at what were my actual sales and what's my consensus forecast going forward. And based on my revenue numbers, I'm going to have a miss for this year of 5.24 million in revenue. Okay. Again, you can go down each of these and you say, okay, well, you know, which ones are killing me? Is it Office Bromance? And that one doesn't look too bad for this year. Crispy Bacon doesn't. Which is a fantastic smelling soap. So you can then start drilling down quickly and then go one at a time and say what's actually impacting me negatively versus positively. You can see here, Irish Winter, in terms of my revenue, I'm exceeding my revenue, I'm exceeding my profitability. So this is actually a positive variance. Okay. So when you look at this, this is really from a demand side, this is really based on quantities, right? You've got the quantities we're viewing on one side, and then we're also looking at the financial integration on the other side. We're saying, okay, what are the quantities? How am I viewing this? You know, what am I hitting on the quantity side, and how's that impacting my financial plan? Okay. Now, keep in mind, all of this information is coming from IBP, and that's where it's being stored. Now I'm going to move on to the supply review.
Hey, Pat, one question on that. You said the data is stored in IBP and then passed over here. What if there's new data elements, new plants, new items? Does that get incorporated automatically or does it require changes?
Yeah, it depends how you set up your query. So in this case, I've set up a query for everything to come over. When you build this, you would say, okay, what information will be extracted? You can bring everything in the entire database, which probably is going to take a while. You're really trying to build this in a way and structure this in a way that you're getting information quickly at the level you need. You may not need to be at the product level, but as new data is created in IBP, it'll automatically, when you refresh, it'll automatically get loaded to this. Okay. All right. So now and when I was talking before, now you're able to take things like demand, which is at the customer level, and we're going to talk about the supply review. And when I talk about supply, I'm talking really about looking at your inventory projections, your total production, and then comparing that to your total demand, right? So what you're trying to do is bring all of those pieces of information together in one place. So when you look at this, you know, some companies call it an all-in-one or a triple play, or, you know, every company kind of has a little take on it. But really what you're looking at is your inventory positions, your total demand, right? Your forecast coming through, or your netted demand coming through, and depends on which is relevant for your business, and then your total production that you're supplying, right? So in this case, we're looking forward. I want to look at that for the next 12 months or 24 months. And what I can do here is I've said, okay, well, in this case, let's look at the next 12 months. I've got, I'm just going to look at my DCs, because that's all I want to look at for when I'm looking at inventory projections. Well, no, I'll leave them all on actually for now. And what I'm going to see here is, here's my inventory target is my green number, right? So if you look at my inventory target, it's sitting here at this month. My minimum inventory is down here for this month. So in December, I'm sitting in a minimum inventory of about 370K. And then you look at your maximum target, and that maximum target typically is your lot size plus your plus a maximum of some sort. Okay. But then you're kind of coming down here, looking at your total productions and your total production across for my selection, and then overall looking at your total demand, my consensus demand. All right. Now, the nice thing about this is I can then quickly go down and say, okay, I want to look at, in this case, I only want to look at my DCs, but I can also go down to my product families or product groups and then say, okay, I want to look at this product family, the luxury edition of soaps for my product family, okay? And I can see where things are here. I'm going to take this off the DC, sorry. I'm going to leave everything. Okay. Okay, so you can see for luxury, I've brought everything in here, and this is what my plan looks like for my total production and my total demand, as well as my inventory projections for this particular product family. I can then break that down even further, and I can say only give me the XLs. I'll look at just XLs. That's the size, and I can see I'm hitting my inventory targets here. My total demand sitting at 1.9, my total production sitting at 649. So I know I've got some type of a mismatch here where I'm not making enough to hit my total demand. I might want to go in and look to see if my inventory targets, if I've got enough inventory on hand, et cetera. Okay. The key here, though, is now you're getting a one-stop shop for all the information relative to one particular, either a product family, a product group, a size, and then going all the way down to the actual specific product. Okay. And again, it all rolls up, and I can consistently kind of go in and then review each one of these products and then quickly see which one is out of tolerance, if you will. Okay. And those are probably, those are fairly standard, kind of fairly straightforward kind of projections that you'll see. The next one I'm going to show you, and this is kind of really where the rubber meets the road. And this is really going to be, we're going to be looking at the financial plan. And this is probably the key component of Spotlight and kind of what we're trying to provide for our clients. And that's the ability to take the information on your operational plan and then actually take that against your revenue, your production, and your profitability, and then drive that and look at each one of those over the course of not only the past 12 months or your current financial year, but also look over the course of the next 12 months or the next 24 months. Okay. And this is new. I mean, this is something that is really kind of, and when I say it's new with IBP, it's kind of, this is the next level from a Gartner maturity model of what companies are doing, right? They're taking their sales, their revenue, their profitability, and then taking that and then looking at variances and seeing how they're performing over time. And then making the operational adjustments to say, do I have the right product mix? Am I selling the right things? Am I focused on selling the right things? And then what is the variance going forward? And do I need to make a course correction? And if so, is that promotions? Is that, putting price discounts, et cetera, that maybe drive more demand? Do I need to go into additional markets, et cetera? What types of business decisions that you'd be making with this information? So if I look in the past, right, if I'm looking at, am I going to hit my yearly numbers? And that would be kind of the first place to look on this particular section. I would then look at my customer region, and I would say, okay, well, overall for this year, I'm going to run in this, and this was consistent with the previous dashboard, but I'm coming in at 5.24 under revenue, under my revenue target or my projected revenue. And then what I can do is I can say, okay, well, it looks like, from a revenue perspective, Americas are way underperforming. And then I've got not only from a cost, not only from a revenue perspective, they're underperforming, but they're also underperforming from a cost perspective, right? So my costs are in this case, my costs are lower, and then my profitability now is, the variance is 3.4 million, right? So I'm 3.4 million profit under profitability from what my projections were to the AOP plan, okay? So now if you think about it from an executive perspective, this gives you the information well ahead of time to get in front, make some business decisions, knowing that my plan, if it plays out this year for the US, I'm gonna miss by $3.5 million on profitability. So now I've got the information to make decisions around how I'm gonna fill that gap. So if you know that, knowing this, now I've got 4 months to start to start working on it, or September through the end of the year, and then try and make decisions, right? And again, are you going to go into different markets? Are you going to do promotions, et cetera? Or do you need to focus on different products? And what we've seen customers kind of really think about is when the second piece of this, by looking at your profitability and your production costs, that piece of it, just getting the revenue number may not be good enough to hit your profitability number. And we've seen that time and time again, where on the supply chain, customers or clients, companies will hit their quantities, but they won't hit their profitability numbers, but they will hit their revenue numbers. And they'll do it by hook or by crook. And so what this allows you to do is say, okay, well, if I'm really looking at this and I want to look at my profitability, if I'm making a change on my profitability, right, what do I need to go after, right? So in this case, I'm overperforming on my highest performing or my highest revenue product. In this case, it's Irish Winter. Okay. As I work through my products, I can kind of go through and say, okay, well, it looks like the Paper Street soap is significantly underperforming, right? If I look at the Black Sheep soap, that's significantly underperforming, as well as the formerly employed soap. So when you look at these numbers, now you know what to go after, right? And you can do that as part of the S&OP plan. Now you have this information to have a meaningful discussion about what your variability is, and then which products you need to fix. Okay. Not only that, you can kind of look at your production costs and your profitability. And what you'll see here, if we look overall, right, and then we'll kind of look at it going forward in a second. But if you look at your overall variance, and the interesting thing about this, and this is why when you only look at revenue, you kind of have to be careful. If you look at the variance, we're missing at 5 million on the revenue side. But if you look at the profitability down here versus my annual operating plan, I'm exceeding it by almost $1 million for this fiscal year. So it tells you a different story. So I'm selling higher margin products. I'm missing on the top end, but I'm beating on the bottom end, right? So, you know, depending on your business philosophy, that may or may not be appropriate for your executives. Now, obviously, you want to hit on both sides, but knowing that may be more palatable than just missing on revenue, okay, or missing on both. The other thing is now you can see what your production variance is over time and kind of how it's trending, right? So you can see month to month visually you can see that in this case I'm kind of trending down over time, and I trended down over the course of the year, right? At some point I consolidated my actuals, right? So in September, everything that was in the past has actually happened versus my annual operating plan. And then September going forward is everything that will happen in the future. Okay. And then you can say, okay, well, let's look at the next 12 months, right? That's what's happened for this year, right? Now I can look at the next 12 months and take that same initial look. Okay. So again, I've got a variance here. I can go through each one of my products. The next 12 months, I've got a negative variance on the revenue side and an even more significant variance on the profitability side. So again, is that something that the executives will make a decision on and have that information to go with? In the next 12 months, you may see a different scenario where Europe is significantly outperforming the US, and maybe not. So in this case, they're significantly underperforming the US. Okay. So the US did poorly the previous 12 months, and then the subsequent 12 months, they're looking to perform significantly higher than our counterparts in Europe. And again, you can do the drill down and go product by product by product by product family, location, et cetera. You have all that capabilities to do drill downs. Okay. I'm going to stop here, Mike. Do we have any questions? Any comments? This is pretty busy, and it's a lot of information here. I don't know if we have anything.
I think one question that's come up is, what does it take to sort of implement to get this in? Is it plug and play? How much customization is needed and some timing around it?
Yeah, so customization, we're building and we've built out all kind of the custom extractors based on, so I will show you this. These are kind of the key figures, if you will, based on demand and supply. And we will have basically a library of key figures that are available, and most of these are based on standard IBP or coming from SAP or Salesforce, etc. What we will have though is we're assuming about a 25% customization, where there will be specific fields or additional customization with an IBP to get the data in the way that you want, or because this unlocks data in a separate way, that you may want to make those customizations here. But this is going to be about a 75 to 80% fit, and then we'll make adjustments from there.
Cool.
Okay.
No, I think that's really good. And again, I think this closes a huge gap in the reporting platform today.
Right.
We'll launch a poll here real quick, just to see what people actually use. So I kind of put some up here to see what do you guys use today. Hopefully that can help.
Right.
We will see. Leave this open for 5 minutes while people vote.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to show you. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we'll kind of answer questions at the end. The one thing I did want to show you, and this is kind of an interesting one that allows capability from an absorption perspective. And we've had several clients that have been concerned about absorption, production absorption, which is their budget, if you're looking at the manufacturing plants, and their production budget versus what they actually consume or absorb into the year, right? And based on cost, and it's always based on cost. And so what we're showing in this particular dashboard is the absorption numbers. So we can look at our historical and planned production. So here's our historical production over time. And this is what we've done over the past year, right? And so this unlocks, we bring that information into IBP, and that unlocks things like looking at plan attainment, looking at your adherence type numbers, et cetera. As well, it allows you to then get an absorption number, and then look to see if you're under or over your absorption numbers, right? So I'll bring this back to September. I think let's go through the end of August. And these numbers will probably make the most amount of sense for everyone. So in this case, what I'm showing is that I consistently underproduced based to my AOP plan, right? So in this case, my AOP production value was 6.8 million, and my actual production values year to date were 4.7, right? So, if you look at this gives you information to say, okay, well, now I am under budget, right, on the manufacturing side by at the end of the year, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year in this case, and I've got it up here, I'm looking at about 2.5 million under budget, right? So that's probably your plant managers are going to be kind of freaking out about that, knowing that they're missing their absorption numbers by almost 2.5 million. So those are the kind of things that now you can have that information and that ability to say, okay, well, how is that going to impact my overall cost for the year, right? So, you go into the year knowing that you're going to allocate costs in a certain way, but if you're running 2.5, 30% under production, now you may have to take different financial decisions and reallocate costs through the rest of the year. And this is a number, this is something that, just wasn't available in the planning system, but because we have the plan going forward, I can tell you what is in the past, but I can also tell you what my plan will be going forward, right? So now I can see, okay, what my planned production is 11.8 million, and I'm still not gonna, in this case, I've only got my actuals, but I can say that's gonna be the gap for this year. And if I look here, I can see that my actual production over time starts increasing the second half of this year. So if you look at your total production, your plan versus your actuals, in this case, over the entire period, and I don't have it here, and I wish I should have done that, that would then give you, are you going to hit your absorption numbers by the end of the year? Is the third and fourth quarter of the year going to be able to make up for the underperformance in the first half of the year. And what it prevents, in this case, it looks like, yes, that's going to be the case. And what it prevents is making poor decisions based on an absorption number that really, now I've got that information within the planning system, and I can look at my operational plan and compare that to my financial plan and make a better decision for the overall operation of your organization. Again, I'm not going to run something that's at a higher cost just to fill a need and hit my absorption number. I'm going to let the plan play out, knowing that I'm going to make it up at the end of the year. So that's kind of the unlock that the conversations that you'll be able to have, your executives will be able to have using a tool like this. They'll be able to make better decisions with all of the information, both financial and all of our quantities. Okay. So that's kind of, I have a lot more here. There's a few more that I want to show. I'm going to show you one other. Let me show you one thing real quick. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to come here and refresh the data. This is all coming directly from our system. So in this case, I'm refreshing everything. So what the system is doing now is it's hitting, refreshing all the customer, location, demand, time dimensions, as well as supply key figures for everything within our system. Now, obviously, we're in a test system, but it's fairly robust. And then now I'm downloading whatever information was integrated into IBP in the past probably 20 or 30 minutes. Okay, so I'm done, right? That's all it took. So if I'm sitting here and I'm an analyst and I'm getting ready for the SNOP meeting, I can get information immediately, right, or almost immediately, based on late breaking information, have it in Spotlight in the Power BI being the platform for Microsoft that this is built on, have it sitting in your inbox and publish out based on 30 seconds, what was that, 10 seconds worth of load time. And that's pretty consistent. So now I've got real-time information rather than having to wait for the next BI load or having to consolidate all of this. And again, you can pull that not just from IBP, you can pull it from external sources, Salesforce, etc. So all of those things are capable. If you have an API that you can bring the data in, you can use it and bring it into Spotlight. Okay. Now we got 5 minutes, Mike, so I'm going to kind of leave that. I know we want to open up for questions.
Yeah, I think that was the questions that we had. Let me just check one more time. I think that's it. No, this was really awesome, Pat, and I think it kind of shows the flexibility that SAP is putting into its planning platforms, where it's not just take it or leave it, but it really allows companies like us, to be honest, to pull this in,
right,
and people to use whatever they want to in the future. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, to be quite honest, of all of the different solutions that are going to be extensively linked with IBP. So hopefully it gives people an idea of what they can start to use it for and how they can use it. Specifically, this Spotlight tool is going to be a partner qualified solution available for a plug and play from SAP's App Store, from SCM Connections. So you can go ahead and reach out to us for more information on that. We'll go ahead and email this out to all the registrants and attendees with the recording as well as contact information. So if this is something you want to go into more depth with or understand how it's going to work for your organization, we are more than happy to share that. And with that, Pat, any closing thoughts?
No, I just forgot that here's another one that I think I will show just real quick, and I forgot I had this set up. But what I'm showing here is the projected inventories, and this is one of the things that I think is actually, if you look over the course of my average inventory values, I can do that by product family, I can do it by product group, I can do it by specific periods. So if I look, I can slice and dice there to see how much inventory on average I'm carrying for each one of these products. In this case, for Irish Winter, I'm going to carry across my supply chain 2.4 million. And then for the AOP, I only planned on 1.6 million. So I'm way over on my my inventory carrying costs for this, my expected inventory capital spend. So that's kind of information that you can use to have the discussions, right? What's causing that? I'm way under everywhere else, but I've got a few that are kind of killing me. So this is really, I think, to me, this is really nice from a capital perspective and your inventory projections. Again, you've got your inventory projections going forward. You can actually make decisions based on it. So.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Well, with that, thanks everybody for attending. Again, we will share this and a bunch of other information with you, and look forward to other webinars from SCM Connections. Again, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.